And we are going to get started. This week is a little bit different. We're going to continue. As I shared with you last week's lesson came very much from a situation that was brewing on the home front for me, which was that my brother was not doing well. He had spent time in the hospital. He had actually spent multiple trips to the emergency room. And he had just gotten out of the hospital last Saturday. So he is home this week, but he's still struggling. He's not. Yesterday, I guess, was a bit of a down day for him. And one of the things is we don't really know what's going on. At least we don't know what's going on yet. And one of the things that stuck out to me was his thought process as he went through challenge and adversity, right? So what we did is we sat down last week to start looking at biblical laws of thought. How do you think? How do we think biblically? And we came up with a number of different principles last week. We went through four, and I ran out of time. Which, Jamie, you can tell Steve that is evidence of my lack of preparation. I had more material than I had time for, and that was on me. But just as a quick recap, last week, one of the first laws we looked at was the law of permission. Now, the law of permission said you can't change what you haven't given yourself permission to see differently. There's a lot of folks that get stuck in a certain way of thinking, and there's a lot of people that need to have permission to think differently. And so one of the things that you have to do for yourself is you have to give yourself permission to think differently. We talked about the law of anticipation. And the law of anticipation, I think, talks about what we're thinking about, we get so excited about, and that's what we want to share, right? And we get excited about things like that. We talked about the law of focus, and what you focus on expands. And what you look for is what you find. We picked on Ted last week because he was dressed in a bright red color, if memory serves. And then we looked at the law of substitution. Now, this was something that got a little bit, law of substitution. And there's a lot of people that whenever they face challenge or adversity or whatever it turns out to be in life, they find they may find themselves in a situation where they can become distracted for a period of time, right? You can become distracted for a period of time, and during that period of time, you may forget about some of the problems that you have, right? We have things that are designed to do that. They're called movies, right? Maybe there's something going on. You see a movie, and for a couple of hours, you're enthralled somewhere else. You're distracted. You have your mind taken off of those things. But what happens is that as soon as that movie is done, what happens is those thoughts come back in, right? So my dad was over. My dad knows a dermatologist who is also apparently an amateur veterinarian. Dermatologist knows how to diagnose whatever's wrong with my dad's horse. That's what I know. One horse is dead, I will tell you that. But we had that conversation yesterday. My dad came over and he says, "Hey, your brother's still struggling," and so I just said, "Well, what's your dermatologist say?" And I said, "Just let's keep in mind that he did kill the other horse, right? So." Let's take some of these things with the appropriate perspective, right? But my dad's philosophy about a lot of things is, oh, you just need to get your mind off it. You just got to go get distracted, right? Go cut a load of firewood, go bale a load of hay, whatever it turns out to be. That was life growing up on the farm. But what happens is that if we don't put something good in its place, then that's really what substitution is all about. We need to put something better in its place, right? So what are you thinking about? Now, today I have four more laws with you, provided that I have time. Jess has me on the stopwatch here to see to try to keep me on track. I will do my best to get through this. But I want to, before we go into it, as I was doing the limited preparation, Steve, I'll tell you all about this after. Okay, I'll tell you, your neck's in the noose. It's my fault. I'll make it up to you after class. All right. But I got to thinking about how when we study these laws, we have to keep in mind that there's good and bad with them. There's good and bad with them. And I don't know that I've ever taught this law singly. I've mentioned it from time to time. But I've mentioned before that there's 7 laws that God used to create everything. And one of those laws is the law of polarity. And the law of polarity simply says, for everything there is an opposite. And I'm sure I've told you, we've had this conversation before. The opposite of left is, the opposite of wrong is, the opposite of up is, the opposite of light is, the opposite of heavy is, opposite of inside is, right? We have all these opposites, right? So when we understand this, the law of polarity, there's opposites that exist out there. And a lot of times the opposites, they aren't necessarily good or bad, right? Is your right hand good or is your left hand good? And the answer is they're both good. They're both good, right? But when it comes to how we can think one way or we can think another way. So when we look at these laws, we can also understand how they can be misapplied. Right? So if we think, just as I was talking about the law of substitution, if we start thinking about things that don't serve well, that can put us in a pretty bad place. So we got to change that out. So you can substitute good things or bad things. It's like when you go to the restaurant and so I probably never told you this story. I was in Springfield, Missouri, for a dinner, and the menu comes out, and in all honesty, I knew nothing. I knew nothing that was on this dinner. I saw something that said steak, which I am generally for. It's one of my favorite food groups, steak. What I didn't realize is that the word in front of it changed everything about it because it said cauliflower steak. And so it had there was duck, there was some seafood thing, and then there was cauliflower steak. And I thought, well, it's just steak that has some cauliflower on it. I must be able to scrape that off. I will tell you, I learned something that day. I spent $14 at McDonald's afterwards in 2018 dollars or whatever it was. Like I got like 2 extra value meals, right? I was like, just keep it coming, right? But I look at it and it's like, well, here's the cauliflower steak, but it also comes with asparagus. And I was like, well, maybe I can substitute the asparagus for something. Maybe there's something I can substitute that for, right? So I could substitute it for a piece of cake, or maybe I could substitute it for a baked potato or carrots or whatever it turns out to be. Like there's different things we can substitute. So anyway, I'm going to give you this verse right now. And it's a little out of context, so I want to try to do my best to help make some sense of this. But I would refer you to Romans chapter 1, verses 24 and 25. Romans 1, 24 and 25. Paul writes, "Therefore God gave them over in their sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged they substituted the truth about God for a lie, and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator who is forever praised. Amen. So Paul is writing here about sexual impurity and stuff like that, but I'm going to just take this half a step back and I'm going to ask you to go with me here. But this even applies to how we think, right? If we want to think about things that don't serve well long enough, God will say, all right, if that's what you want, I'll turn you over to it. So maybe a little different magnitude than what you've thought of that before. Now, with that said, let's get into the new laws that we're looking at this week. The first law that we're going to look at is called the law of exposure. I should just leave the law of up here because they're all exposure. I think exposure. I think that's how you spell it. And this law is defined as whatever you expose your mind to consistently shapes your thinking. Whatever you expose your mind to consistently, that shapes your thinking? Shapes your thinking. Now, I think of this in terms of maybe learning your math facts as a youngster, right? The more you focused on your addition and your multiplication, and you got those things out, the easier it became to think those things. Now, that didn't work for everybody. Right? There's some people that I can say, 8 times 7, and you instantly have it. And there's other of you that maybe are a little uncomfortable with that. My wife would be looking out the window if she was here now, if I started throwing out stuff like this. But this is, once you think a thought, it becomes easier to think that thought. There's a quote, I'm wanting to say it goes to Emerson, that says something to the effect of, the human mind once stretched never returns to the same shape, right? So like as we get these new things, we have to recognize that what we think about very much shapes how we think. What I want to draw your attention to here is Psalm chapter 1, the first Psalm. We're going to look just at the first 2 verses of this psalm, because this very much talks about, we could actually read probably the whole psalm here, but it talks very much about what is it that you're giving your attention to? What are you exposing yourself to? Psalmist writes, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is on the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night." That's what he's. Let's go on. Only had that in my notes. Let's go on. What's verse 3 say? He's like a tree. Going by memory here. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. What is it that you expose yourself to? 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. 2 Corinthians 3:18, Paul writes, "And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit." So if we want to keep exposing ourselves to these things, it's going to shape how we think. Example that I was given here, out of curiosity, how many of you have social media in some form? Facebook, Instagram? And let me ask this a different. Who doesn't have it? couple of you don't. Okay. For those of you that do, for those of you that do, when you open social media, how does it make you feel? Anxious. Okay. And is that everybody? Everybody get anxious when you open social media? Curious. Okay. What other things happen? Informed. Okay. Amused. There you go. There you go. I want to give you just this perspective. I want you to give you this to consider. That your social media is it's more of a mirror. It's more of a mirror. That it just reflects back some of those things that you may be interested in. Um, Somebody said to me that, social media is only intended to build outrage. And I can certainly understand that. I can certainly I'll take it a step back. We could take the social part out of it. I think there's a lot of media. I think there's a lot of media that all it's intended to do is to build outrage. And I want to remind you that this law is at work. It's at work. Whatever you expose your mind to consistently shapes your thinking. And so if you expose your mind to something that builds outrage within you, what's that going to do? Remember the law of polarity. You can use it this way, you can use it that way. I think there's a lot of folks that will benefit from turning things off. I think there's a lot of folks. So that's the law of exposure. The next law I want to give you, after a week and a half, I finally figured out this trick. The law of expression. The law of expression. And the law of expression is defined this way. Thoughts grow stronger when given words. Thoughts grow stronger when given words. Now, I got to talk to the men in the room first. Owen, pay attention. This is coming your way. There will be a time that you say something in your life, and there will be a female nearby who will not understand you. You may think, you can smile all you want. Look around. Look around. Every guy in this room is smiling because this is what happened. They say, hey, Bob's not. Bob hasn't figured this out. But sorry, Bob. You should be teaching this part of the lesson. You got it figured out. But like there's times where I will say something and Trace will look at me as if I have two heads. Like that the idea is that you may think that you are clear. And other people may find that to not be so clear. Now, let me open it up to everybody. Is there anybody in here who has ever said something to someone at some time that was misunderstood? We all have. We all have. There's times where we think that we are really clear, and the reality is that the other person doesn't pick up everything that you're putting down, right? And one of the things that we have to recognize is thoughts grow stronger when given words. And I think of this both verbally and I think of it written as well, right? I think of this verbally and written. Have you ever had somebody tell you something and somebody says something to you in such a way that it really stuck with you? I was like, oh, like that's, there are some people out there who are absolutely artists with their words. and they present them to you in such a way that you can pick them up and you can hold them. There's probably some of your you may have some favorite Bible verses, and there's some that are easier for you to remember, even if it's just in concept, because of the handles that it's given you to hold. I'm sure I've shared this story with you before, but Trace and I were watching an episode of Modern Family, a sitcom that was on TV for a number of years. And there's a husband and wife in there. What are their names? Phil and Claire. Now, he's a little out there. Yeah, Phil's all over the place. And Claire, will tell him things and they're not necessarily on the same page, and that's where we get some humor, right? And so there's one time that they're given they're showing this episode in different clips, and Phil has done something, and Claire is greatly distressed with Phil, and Phil doesn't know what to do, and his response is, "Happy Valenberthiversary." He doesn't know. He doesn't know if he has missed Valentine's Day. He doesn't know if he's missed a birthday. He doesn't know if he's missed an anniversary. And as they give some of the context, they're showing about how he's missing all these things. He's missing all these things. He's missing all these things. And, one of the things was a wedge salad. He's like, Claire says, "You should try, I think you would like a wedge salad." He ignores the wedge salad, and now, whenever I would travel, if I would see a wedge salad on the menu, I would take a picture and I would send that to my wife. "Hey, they have wedge salads here," fully expecting her to get mad at me, which she does get mad at me from time to time, if you must know. But when we have the right words, right? When we have the right words, it allows us to be more impactful, more expressive with what we're doing. A couple of verses I will give you. Matthew 12:34, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." In James chapter 3, verses 4 and 5, it says, "When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal." When we know how to express, we can turn the whole thing. Or take a ship, for example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. And so the words that we use are so important. If we give expression to thoughts like, "I'm not good at this," it can lead to some feelings of insecurity. Right? I'm not good at this. But if we can give better words to it, if we can give a better expression, it can point us in a completely different direction. Instead of thinking, I'm not good at this, and we've all been there, right? We've all done things that we haven't been good at. But perhaps a better expression of that thought is, I'm learning, and God is with me. What type of feeling does that give you? One takes you towards a feeling of insecurity, takes you towards a feeling of confidence. Right? That's where we are. So there's the words themselves, but I'll also give you this. I think it's important what you write down. Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Habakkuk says, "I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint." Then the Lord replied, "Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. There is something almost magical about writing something down. There is something that changing the expression from here to something written can be hugely impactful. In perhaps one of the most simplistic examples, who has gone to the grocery store? Who has gone to the grocery store without a list? Who has gone to the grocery store with a list, right? Like what gives you better scenarios? Have you ever gone to the grocery store without a list, you got home and said, I forgot. I missed something. Now, if you have the right grocery list, somebody else may be able to look at that grocery list and say, "Oh, I know what you're having for dinner tonight. I know what you're eating this whole week." Right? That's where, and it's just that perhaps that's an overly simplistic example, but I hope it begins to help frame this idea of the expression, how we express things matters. All right, next law. How am I doing on time, son? I have 5 minutes left. Oh my goodness, I'm not doing all right then. I got two more laws. All right, we're going fast, folks. The law of agreement. All right, the law of agreement. When you agree with a thought, you give it power. When you agree with a thought, you give it power. Amos chapter 3, verse 3 says, can two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? Matthew chapter 18, verses 19 and 20, Jesus says, truly, again, truly, I tell you, if two of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where two or three gather in my name, there am I with them. So we have to recognize that what we agree with gives thoughts power. If we agree with shameful or condemning thoughts, that will empower an accuser. But when we agree with God's truth, it empowers healing. Something that I have come to realize is there's a lot of people who make agreement with thoughts of limitation. And I want to caution you against that today. Do not agree with limitation. God did not make you to be small. God did not make you to be weak. God did not make you to be less than. Romans chapter 8, verses 37, 38, and 39, Paul writes, no, in all these things we are more than conquerors. For those of you that are underliners, I want to encourage you to underline that word conqueror. That's a powerful word. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Paul goes on to write, for I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. When God made you, he has big plans for you. Be careful about agreeing with limitation. You see, that's part of what I see my brother struggling with right now. He's going through a health issue, and it becomes easy to say, oh, limitation, limitation, limitation. And it's been a sticky subject. So let me encourage you today, do not make agreement with limitation. The last law I have for you today. The last law I have for you today is the law of repetition. Law of repetition say repeated thoughts become beliefs. Repeated thoughts become beliefs. If you want to repeat those thoughts of limitation, you know what's going to happen. You're going to be believing that you're limited. Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. Maybe I'll find it here. Joshua says, keep the book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Meditate day and night. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Thank you. Hearing words like you're not enough every day as a child can wire insecurity. But repeating God's word rewires your mind towards truth. I have a couple of phrases that I've probably used with you before, but thoughts drive beliefs. Beliefs drive behaviors. And behaviors drive results. Think about this framework whenever it comes to the opportunity to share the love of Jesus with somebody else. What are your thoughts about that? Some stranger on the street, how do you approach them? Some people think, I'll let somebody else do that. That's the thought. You think it enough, it becomes a belief. It's going to be somebody else's thing to take care of. The belief becomes a behavior. You avoid the situation. Right? Just understand that. As I wrap up, I want to give you this encouragement. I've shared this, I think I've shared this story with you before. Whenever I was a kid, my dad still thinks of himself as a great buck hunter. He does. Like there now, I will tell you, there's how he sees himself in his mind, and then there's reality, right? We like to give him a hard time about this, but he gets so excited. He gets so excited about going out and being able to see the deer or whatever. And as a kid, he's like, when are you going to go with me? When are you going to go with me? When are you going to go with me? And I finally gave in one year and I said, Dad, I'll go with you. And if you remember the story, I'm up in the tree stand with my dad and I end up setting my pants on fire. I got out of the tree stand. I walked home. I have not gone deer hunting since. But there is something about this. This mental picture of going hunting. I want to give you this mental picture for you and your thoughts. Take some time and put yourself in the tree stand in your mind and watch for those thoughts to come through. Watch for those thoughts to come through because they come through, and every once in a while they're sort of nasty thoughts, right? And I want to encourage you to go back to a verse that we started out with last week, 2 Corinthians 10:5. Take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I want to encourage you today to hunt your thoughts. I want to encourage you today to capture those rogue thoughts. I want to encourage you today to discipline those thoughts. Make them obedient to Christ. Your thoughts must be disciplined and brought under spiritual authority. When you find these thoughts, maybe you need to ask yourself the question, well, is this true? Is this true? You know, perhaps you find yourself in a situation where you're facing some type of limitation. You're facing some limitation, but you look all around and you look all around and you see, well, there's abundance all around me. And you may start to think, oh my goodness, God must have left some piece out of me. Some people struggle with relationships, right? They feel lonely. God made friends for everybody else, but somehow no friends for me. And I want to encourage you to take that thought captive. And I want to encourage you to make it obedient to Christ. Some of us have an inner monologue that can be quite abusive. I want to remind you that there is a world of difference between talking to yourself and listening to yourself. And I want to encourage you to maybe not so much listen to yourself, but to talk to yourself and to repeat those truths that God says about you over and over and over again. I think that's where we will wrap up today. I still have more lessons on thoughts. Whenever I started this lesson, this was not the lesson that I expected to teach. There's actually a different lesson that I fully expect to teach, and I will teach at some point. Maybe one day I'll be prepared, and we'll do that. Steve, we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's where we are today. So I'm going to stop the recording.